Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Build It with Tim. Today we're going to be talking about validating and comparing connected values. Okay, and I'm going to get into a lot more detail about this once we actually get into the builder. But what we essentially want to do is we want to make a comparison between a value that's entered on a form, so through an actual form input, and then we want to compare it and ultimately validate against the comparison. And that comparison is coming from a connected record or connected value. So I'm going to go through an example in just a moment when we take a look at the finished build. But and then I'm going to show you how this is different from some of the pre-built options that are inside of validation rules and connection field filtering and such inside of a form component. Okay, so to be doing this, we're going to be using three different main functions of Tadabase. Number one being the actual Tadabase REST API. Okay, so inside of Tadabase, there are tons of different places where you can run pipes and make API requests. So we're going to be taking advantage of that today and exploring more in depth our actual data structure and the data that's available to us by making an API request. Additionally, we're going to be using validation rules because ultimately we want to stop a user from doing something if this comparison and this validation fails. And we're going to be doing all of this inside of the form component. All right, so as usual, we'll take a look at the finished build now, and then we will go to the builder and I will explain more detail. All right, see you there. All right, so here's the finished build. And what we're looking at here is a form to post a new job. So I'm logged in as a user. I have not purchased any credits yet, and I want to post a job. So if I try to post a job now, test job, sure, here's our description. And I want this post to be active for 5 weeks. You're going to see that it's telling me that I don't have enough credits, right? Because 1 week equals 1 credit. So this should cost me 5 credits. I have 0. So if I go to purchase credits and I purchase this credit pack using the Stripe form here, that will give me those 5 credits that I just purchased for 500 fake dollars. And then I go back to post a job. And here we go. We can post in our same job name and description, have this go be active for 5 weeks. And now it will work because I have the available credits. And then upon refresh, if I go back to post another job, you're going to see it's going to show me how many credits I have remaining. In this case, I purchased 5, I spent 5, I have nothing left. So now I have to go back and purchase more credits. Okay, so let's jump over to the builder and show you how this all works. Okay, so here we are looking at our data builder. Okay, and I've built out this example of job posts. Okay, so we're going to have an app where people can log in, they can create accounts, log in, and they can post jobs that are going to be publicly visible. Now, in order to monetize this, we're going to have those users actually purchase credits that they can then use to post the job. Okay, so every single post is going to cost X amount of credits, and we want to look up how many credits that user has available, compare it to the cost of the post, and then validate that form submission to say yes, you can post this job because you have enough credits, or no, you can't post the job because you don't have enough credits. Okay, and in order to do this, well, we'll go through the whole form, but a couple things I wanted to just go through inside the data builder. So number one, I guess let's just go through each table and take a look at how this was set up. And hopefully you can use this to adapt to your particular use case. Okay, but the idea here is that this is the job post table. This is where all of the actual posts are going to live, and this is what users are going to be creating records for. And this is the record that we want to either approve or deny based on the amount of credits that they have. So the posting table is pretty simple for now. It's just a name of the post, a description, and then this is the field that I'm using to determine like the credits or the cost of the post. Okay, so how many weeks would you like this post to be active for? And on the page builder, I'm going to tell the user that 1 week equals 1 credit. So if you have 5 credits, you can post this job for 5 weeks. And then we have a connection field to the users table so that we know who posted it. Okay. Inside of this table, the credit packs is kind of where I'm storing the information about purchasable credits in this case. Okay, so we have 3 different types of credit packs. We have a small, a medium, and a large, 5, 10, 15 credits, and then an associated cost. Okay, and when we purchase a credit pack, we are going to store a record inside of this post-credit transaction table, and that has a connection to the user. It has a connection to the credit pack that that user purchased. It has a date, time that they purchased it. It has the number of credits that were inside of the credit pack, okay, from the credit pack record. And then we have some Stripe fields, Stripe response, and a charge ID. So what I'm going to be doing in this build in particular is I'm going to be using a couple techniques that I discussed in previous Build It with Tim videos. So number one being the Stripe payment module or component inside of a form, and saving values to local storage. And I'll go over those once I get to the page builder. Okay, so once all of these 3 tables are populated, or rather the first 2, the job post and the post credit transactions, we have a couple of complex formulas and a basic formula on the user record. Okay, so first one we have is purchase credits. So this is counting or summing how many credits have been purchased in total from the post credit transaction table, right? So this table is going to have records of all of the times a user has actually purchased credits. Okay, so we're going to get the sum of that and hold it here on the users table. Then we have the credits used complex formula. So again, this is a sum, but this is going to count how many credits are actually spent by posting jobs. And then finally, we have a number formula or basic formula where we are subtracting the credits used from the purchase credits, and this gives us our running total of credits that this user has available to them. All right, so let's look at the page builder now. And I've set this up to the point where we need to actually install and use the Tadabase REST API and start validating. So this is kind of, pre-built in a sense, but I'll go through each part. All right, so we have a user signs up. Okay, they create an account, and then they go to the home page of job posts. And then in the menu, you can see this. There's a page here called Purchase Credits. So they're going to go to this page where they can then purchase the credits. Right inside of this page, what we have is we have a detail component for the credit pack that was selected, and then we have a form component where we're using the Stripe module. Okay, so let's take a look at this now, where we have the detail component, and here's where I'm actually saving some values to local storage. Okay, so the cost, I'm saving the cost, and I've given this a variable name of cost. And then we have the number of credits that come with this pack. Again, I've given this a variable name of credits, and both of those fields have the option to save it to local storage. Now, inside of the form component, this is a form to add a new post-credit transaction. So we're actually purchasing something, we're inserting that record into the transaction table, and then the users table counts the number of credits that were actually purchased. Okay, so here we have, let's go to the form inputs and go to the Stripe module. So the amount we're pulling from browser local storage of the cost, and the currency we're setting to US dollars. Okay, and then our rules here, we'll go over our rules again, because we're not at the point where they're actually posting the job. This is all happening up to that point where they're actually purchasing credits and loading their account with credits. So we have one record rule where we're updating the transaction record. So we're setting the user to the logged in user. We are setting the number of credits to the browser local storage value of credits. Okay, so I could actually do this part in a rule if I wanted to, like the credit pack, but I can just pull it from local storage and then I don't have to add an additional rule. So we're going to go back here and select that. The date, time, purchase to current date and time, and then the 2 Stripe responses. So inside that payment module, I can actually pull Stripe response values, and I've chosen status and the charge ID, and that can be for tracking purposes. Okay, so again, this isn't really, when we get to the validation stuff, that's really the part that I'm hoping you can then translate into your own use case, but I just wanted to show you like a real practical example and how I built it up to this point. Okay, so once somebody actually purchases credits, then they can post a job. Before we get to this form, let's go do this now and purchase some credits so that we can use this form and build it out successfully. Okay, so right now you can see I have 0 credits. If I go select a pack that I want to buy, we'll buy the smallest pack for now. This is all running off of a test account, the Stripe developer, like the test section, not the live section. So here we can purchase with some fake details, and that's going to give me the 5 credits. Okay. So if I go back to the builder here and we take a look at the post-credit transactions, you can see that Tim Young as a user purchased the small credit pack at this time and date, and they have 5 credits purchased. And then here are the 2 Stripe responses. And then if we go to the users table, you can see purchase credit is summing those values. So we have 5 minus 0 is 5 total credits. Okay, so now when I go back to the post a job, you can see now that I have 5 credits. So it's showing me how many credits that I have. And then if I do a test job post, and I want this to be active for 5 weeks, so that would 1 week equals 1 credit, that would spend all of my credits. I can save this, and then the next time I was at this form, you can see I have 0 credits. And we can confirm that just by going back to the data builder here. You can see we purchased 5, we spent 5, and now our total is 0. So what happens now is that I could just continue to make posts, however many I want, and it's just going to keep deducting credits, right? But there's no validation. So this is the point where now we need to actually build in our validation. Okay, so let's go back here and just delete our job posts so that we are at the point where we've purchased the credits, we have the credits, and now we need to validate it. And how we're going to do this is first by going into settings, API keys, and generate a new API key. So we can give this a title. It's just going to be for the test or the REST API, just so we know what key is for what if we made changes to the read, update, or delete options. Okay, so I'm just going to copy these, the app ID, the app key, and the app secret into a notepad so that I have them for later. And then I'm going to go get a couple other values that I want to save. Okay, because we need to know what table are we going to be looking things up in, how are we filtering out those records that we want to look up, and then what field values we want to retrieve. Okay, so we are inserting a job post, and we want to know from whoever the logged in user is, we want to go find their record, and then we want to get the value of total credits. So to do this, we need to first get the table ID, and the table ID can be found up in the URL. Okay, so we can grab it from right here after data tables in the URL when we're looking at a particular table. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to save that. And then we also need a field that we're going to filter by. And in this case, I'm going to search, or I'm going to filter for records by the email field. So if we take this, edit this particular field, actually we can do this one of 2 ways. So we can go look at the actual URL again, and this is the field ID is just email. Or we can actually go into the fields tab, and we can toggle on the field slug. Okay, so here we could just copy the slug of that, and that's what we're going to use to filter by. And then the value that we want to return is total credits, and that's field 76. And we'll see that when we actually do our API request and the response. So now we're going to go into the pipes section, and we're going to search for the Tadabase REST API and install this pipe. And once we have that, we're going to go into our global parameters and paste those API key credentials here. So the app ID, the app key, and the app secret. Okay, so there's a lot of different calls that we can choose here. What we want to do is filter by a single field. Okay, so we are going to do a GET request into the table that we want, where we're going to search by the field that we want and what the value is and the operator is. So there's a bunch of predefined parameters here that we're going to use. Okay, so we can do this actually, since we have all this information. The table ID we've already copied and pasted, so we have our table ID. The field ID is just email. We're going to say the email is, in this case, we can search for my email address that is on my user record. You can see it returns one record. Okay, so here are all of the fields inside of the users table. And again, we wanted field 76 and we want to return that value. So in order to map this response, okay, because there are a bunch of preset responses, but what we want is the total credits. That's the friendly name here. We'll make sure that the data type is a number. But in order to map this out, we have to understand how JSON structures are formatted. And in this case, we have an array of items. So here's our array. We need the key of the array, which is items. Okay, we need the index of the array. Since there's only one, it's going to be .0, and then another dot, and then we need to define the next key inside of this object, and that is going to be field 76. So we can take that and do field 76. So now every time we run this pipe and we say, go get the total credits, what it's doing is it's actually looking at this response. It's saying, okay, here's items, go to the first index, find the next key of field 76 and return the value. Okay, so let's, we're going to go back to the form now. Okay, so there are some, you might like already be somewhat familiar with how we can kind of look into connected records and filter things or filter things out. There's conditions that we can do. Okay, so there, of course, there's dependent dropdowns, which are not really relevant here, but that's a type of filtering based on a connection. And then we also have filter records. So if I actually, let me show you this again. I've clicked on the posted by connection field. So this is a connection to the users table. I've clicked on this and I could filter this, and you can see I can actually pull those field values from the users table. But there's no way that I could actually say is higher than or lower than a current form input. Okay, there is no option to do that. So I could do a static value like 10. Like if you ever get lower than 10, then you're going to have to, repurchase credits every single time. But what we want to be more granular than that. We want to actually compare to make sure that the cost of the post, we want to compare it to the actual number of credits that the user has. So we can't use this option. Okay, what we can do is through the validation rules, we can run a pipe. So we're going to go to rules, validation rules, and add a new one. So here's our pipe that we're going to add, and we're going to do filter by a single field, and we're going to add our parameters. So the table ID, we can do a custom value because this is always going to be the same. We're always going to go into the users table, and we're always going to look at the email field. We're always going to have an operator of is. So these are all custom values, but the value that we're filtering by is going to change. So here we can access logged in users field values, and we can say we want to filter by the email, the logged in user's email. So if I'm logged in, it's going to use my email. If you're logged in, it's going to use yours. And then we can do this comparison. So here we can return our total credits and say if the total credits is lower than a field value of how many weeks would you like this post to be active for. Again, 1 credit equals 1 week. So here we're comparing the total credits to how much the post actually costs. And if this validation fails, then we'll give the user a message saying you do not have enough credits to post this job. Please purchase more credits to continue. Okay, so one thing I just want to make note of that's kind of not super relevant to like the message and the validation itself, but the filter by field ID. So because email is a default field in the users table, right? You have name, email, password. Those are going to exist for every single users table in every single app for every single person. They have kind of like custom field IDs. Okay, if you were comparing or filtering by some other field that's not an email field, and it's also worth noting that when you are filtering by a field like this, if you're looking for one record, you better make sure that you are filtering by a unique value. So whether that's like an auto increment or email is a good option. Anything that can be actually unique. There is a good chance that your field ID might look something like that instead, where field underscore and then a number. But again, because this is a default field, it has a custom ID of just email. Okay, so here we go with this. I'm pretty sure I can save this now and we can go test it. So let me take a look at here. I deleted the posts. I have 5 credits. Um, Great, let's go to the job posting form and give this a try. So if I do, um, what am I trying to hire or put out a job for? Um, I don't know, landscaping, okay? Um, Test description, and we want this to be active for, let's do 3 weeks. Okay, so that lets us submit the form, and I have 2 credits remaining. Now, if I try to do this again and I say I want this to be active for 3 weeks, it's going to look up that value and it's going to validate it and say you don't have enough credits to post this job. Now, I could do 2, right? And that will spend my remaining credits, and now I'm out. So now I have to go back and purchase more. Okay, so that just about does it for this week's episode of Build It with Tim. I hope you were able to understand how we can use the REST API to actually retrieve data that's otherwise not really readily available to us. So this can really kind of improve the whole flow and the extensibility of your platform or your particular application that you're building. And then we've also looked at validation rules and how running pipes inside of validation rules can be enormously helpful. Okay, so any questions, comments, as usual, you can join us in the community to discuss there. And I hope to see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.